so about 10 years ago, that first book that my partner and I wrote, what we wanted to look at is we had seen so much failed wealth transfer, so much dysfunction, so many broken relationships, addictions fed. So we wanted to say, look, similar to a positive psychology perspective, instead of trying to mitigate dysfunction, what are the habits and characteristics of that 10% that do successfully transfer wealth? Mm-hmm. What do they have in common? Maybe we should emulate the successful as opposed to trying to mitigate the issues of the unsuccessful.
Welcome to Motivational Monday, conversations with me, David Ibarra, and today we have as our guest David York from York Howell, attorney at law.
Yeah.
Welcome, David.
I'm very excited to be here.
Well, I am excited to have you too because you happen to be one of the most foremost experts on estate planning and a lot of other things for sure. But I want to dive right into this new book. Yeah. This is your third book, right?
Well, fourth, technically.
Fourth, yeah, okay, fourth, great.
Yeah.
And Dudley's Castle.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about this book and first of all, what motivated you to write this book, a children's book?
Yeah.
And why did it come forth?
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting iteration. I had written 3 books before, 2 with my partner, both on wealth transfer and understanding values and core values and things like that. And then I wrote a book on stewardship. What is stewardship? What does a life of stewardship look like? And I thought I'd had all my books done. But I had this idea as I've seen, we talk so much about wealth planning or estate planning, but I like to think of it as wealth transfer. Mm-hmm. And if you think about wealth, what that really looks like and how you actually transfer mm-hmm. wealth effectively. And I was thinking about the lessons that each generation needs to teach the other. And so...
And part of it is because if you don't get it right and you don't have the definition of wealth right, sometimes you think that you've helped nourish a life, and instead it can have the opposite effect.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, we think that we teach or we don't teach. We teach. Mm-hmm. Teaching is not optional. Just like impact's not optional. Legacy is not optional. Sometimes we think of these things as optional things, and they're not. Mm-hmm. We are going to teach. The question is, what are we teaching, and how intentional are we on that? And so it just started me on saying, okay, how could I actually tell this in story form, but really in a way that parents can talk with their kids or grandparents can talk with their grandchildren and really think about what are the lessons that we need to teach. Because I think by and large, we're very haphazard at best in mm-hmm. what we teach, implicitly or explicitly. And then I'll be honest, I thought it was going to be easier to write a children's book, because it's a daunting task. You've done it.
That's right.
It's way more work than you would mm-hmm. think. And I thought, well, maybe there's an easier way to express this. Now, what I found, and people told me this, and it's true, is harder to write a children's book, so much harder than you think it is, because every word matters, and you're trying to convey messages to a certain age, and you're trying to...
And using less words.
Yeah. It's funny. I did a TED Talk years ago, and someone told me, if you want me to speak for an hour, give me a week's notice on what you want to speak for. If you want me to speak for 10 minutes, give me 4 months. And it's so true, but what's powerful about that is it really gets you down to the essential. And so when you're writing for kids, as you know, mm-hmm. every single word matters because you have a limited number of them.
We both have something in common in that we have a connection to wanting to communicate learning, a culture, at an early age. From 0 to 7, pretty much the behavior and beliefs are going to be set.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons this program is sponsored by Yes, Our Kids Can.
At what age do you wish you had unlocked the principles that lead to success? Where do you think you'd be today if you had learned them as a child? Yes, Our Kids Can is a program developed at Harvard and tested in San Antonio's school systems, designed to give children of all backgrounds the opportunity to plant the seeds for future success, using learning techniques they understand and enjoy. Through engaging animated stories, fun sing-along songs, and interactive games, Yes, Our Kids Can teaches your child the empowering, success-driven principles needed to reach their full potential. Don't miss this opportunity to give your children the future they deserve. Yes, Our Kids Can is available now on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Sign up today and help make your child's dreams a reality.
Okay,
But tell us a
awesome.
little bit about this story, if you would. Just tell us a little bit
so-
about the characters and what is the message here.
Yeah, so it starts with a young boy named Dudley who grows up in an idyllic land. His dad is the king of the castle, or so he thinks, and he's just raised in literally a fairy tale existence. You know, goes on adventures with his friends and dreams of wealth and treasure. But as he grows up, as he's starting to head into adulthood, his dad sits down with him and he says, "There's something you need to understand." He said, "You may think of me as the king of the castle, but I'm not. I'm just the steward of the castle. And if you want the wealth of a castle, you're going to have to go and build your own." And he says to him, he says, "I can't. This is not something that I can give you." And so Dudley goes on his own adventure, which is filled with difficulty and struggle and trial and pain, eventually reaching the point, though, after years of hard work, of creating his own castle, only to find that it's empty. So he goes back to his dad and tells him about all he went through and the work and the effort, but also kind of the emptiness. And it's when his dad shares with him, he said, as the steward, you need to understand that I'm actually something more than an owner, and that I oversee the purpose of this place, and that the purpose of this place is the people. And so, Dudley finally starts to see the castle in a different way.
The purpose of this place is the people.
Yeah. And that was something that Dudley had to learn, and to learn that to actually be a steward, you have to fully invest yourself, blood, sweat, trial, tears, difficulty, but in something bigger than yourself. Right. So once he understood that, then he could go and actually fill his castle with what really mattered. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, that we've got to give this children's book to every business owner in America, because we always talk about, well, what is success? And I often say success is capital plus talent utilized correctly would equal success. And the talent is the investment in people. Yeah. That nothing happens without people. And it's either going to be good or bad. Yeah. David happens to be the guide for me in my estate planning, and you think it's going to be easy. It's about, you've got X amount of things, and you're going to put some over here, and you're going to put some over here. And then the one thing that you told me early on, and I'm going to see if you give me the same advice, you said there's two things that you have to think about when you talk about assets. What are those two things? Well, because they're different. Yeah. And both valuable.
Yeah. And again, those two things are the possessions and then the people. And I think one of the biggest problems with estate planning is that we focus so much on preparing wealth for children and we spend so little time preparing children for wealth. And because we have such an asset-focused approach, give me your balance sheet and give me the names of your kids, and I'll add it all up and divide by the number of kids, and we'll dump those assets down. And it doesn't think through at all impact that wealth is going to have. It doesn't think through the people, the purpose, any of those kind of things. And it's really just such a non sequitur to what parents want. So many of my clients want to raise children who are self-reliant, self-sufficient, engaged, productive. And then their estate plan says, if I die, here's a bunch of unearned, undirected, unintentioned wealth. Go do anything you want with it. And so there's this complete disconnect between what they're attempting to accomplish and what their planning does. Right. And that's why, the average American inheritance is consumed in 18 months by the next generation. So,
wow.
Yeah. And even among the highest net worth, the average half-life of inherited wealth is 8 years. So take what you leave, even among the wealthiest Americans, on average, that is cut in half every 8 years, which means that after one generation, 24 years, on average, the children of high net worth families, ultra high net worth, have about 12% left. And that's what happens when you focus on wealth and not wisdom, when you focus on possessions and not people.
You once told me early on, it's wise to sometimes gift enough to help your children get started, but not so much that they don't have to start.
Yeah. And, it's not Warren Buffett said, leave your inheritance in a way that children can do anything, not do nothing. It's not new. You go back to the book of Proverbs. 3,000 years ago, Solomon said, give me neither riches nor poverty, but only my daily bread. In other words, he saw problems with having too much just as much as not having anything. Right. I mean, let's be honest. In the United States of America, 70%, if you're born into poverty in the United States, 70% chance you'll die in poverty. But on the other side, you look among the highest net worth families, statistically speaking, 90% of that wealth is gone by the third generation. So you have this dual problem that when you have no access to resources, it's hard to get in the game of life. It can be done, but it's hard. But when you have too many resources, you don't even need to play. You don't even have to get out there. And so it's just equating this notion that because some is good, it doesn't mean more is better. And you get to a point of diminishing or even negative return on wealth. And I think people inherently feel that a bit. But
I read a book. You got me thinking, because I'm at that age that you have to think about it. You get to a certain age, whether you like it or not. I should have been thinking about this way earlier. And while I had, it wasn't really set with a lot of thought. But I picked up this book, and I can't remember who suggested I read it, Die with Zero.
Oh, yeah.
And the book Die with Zero isn't suggesting you die with zero money, but it's suggesting that when you pass and go to what next, that what you wanted to leave or give at that time perhaps should have been done way early on while you're alive.
Yeah.
And that the things that you have, a watch, a house, you're the steward of, that is going to be on somebody else's wrist. But the knowledge is yours forever, and that is what is the most valuable piece to pass on. Now, you had a family game and a program that you bring. I mean, who goes to their attorney's office they have children's books, and then you have a game to build and find out the values of a family. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was interesting. So about 10 years ago, that first book that my partner and I wrote, what we wanted to look at is we had seen so much failed wealth transfer, so much dysfunction, so many broken relationships, addictions fed. So we wanted to say, look, similar to a positive psychology perspective, instead of trying to mitigate dysfunction, what are the habits and characteristics of that 10% that do successfully transfer wealth? Mm-hmm. What do they have in common? Maybe we should emulate the successful as opposed to trying to mitigate the issues of the unsuccessful. So we identified 7 things. The very first thing we found is a through line in the families that are most successful in transferring wealth is that they know who they are, what they value, and what they believe. So they have a clear sense of purpose and identity. They have an elevator speech for their family and their wealth. The second is that they prepared the next generation for the wealth. They didn't just prepare wealth for the next generation. So our mystical answer that we came to is that it's about purpose and people, which is, it's the through line on everything. Successful business, successful organization, successful families, purpose and people. But here's the reality. Most families can't tell you what they value. And most families can't articulate that. And we spend so much time creating mission statements, vision statements for work. And then when it comes to our family, we can't even articulate those things about ourselves because you got the tyranny of the urgent and all that other. So what we did is we created a game that people could use to identify and understand the individual and shared core values of the family to help them articulate a why. And once we have a why to our wealth, then everything else honestly becomes so much easier. Roy Disney said, it's not hard to make decisions in life when you know what you value. But it's hard to make decisions in life when you don't know what you value. And you may know that in business, but do you know that personally? Do you know that with your family? So that's what we wanted to try to do. And what we ultimately found is that it actually made estate planning a lot easier. Once you understand all that, okay, now we can do this with an understanding of those values.
So just a little bit about the game, the name of the game, the board, how does it work? Tell us just a little idea of how this process works in creating the family crest, if you will.
Yeah, and it's a great example. Families used to have things like the family crest, where they could look at and see, this is who we are. This is our cornerstone. This is the rubric we use to make decisions. So we initially started it as a card game. We called it Rivets. And rivets are those little things that are used to hold massive things together, bridges. And what I like about rivets is, unlike screws that come in and out or bolts, rivets are meant to be permanent. And you hammer them in and you hold it, it holds steady. It's intended to be permanent. And so you may have different parts, but the rivets are what keeps everything together. And then we started to do that, and we started to do that with families. But then COVID hit, and it got hard to get families together. And then we started to realize, look, this is something everybody needs. So we eventually turned it into, it's a software called Chronology, and it's designed for families. It's also designed for financial advisors, attorneys, family coaches, consultants, anyone can use to help families go through this process of understanding both each person individually, but then also understanding who we are as a family. And so we found it as a great tool for that purpose.
Well, I do a lot of work in the Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich arena. I'm one of the largest licensees of Dr. Hill's work in the world. Wow. My new book, Live Ready, Beyond Think and Grow Rich, on the third principle, we talk about the specialized talent team. And again, we talk about how to do this. What talents does each member have, and how is it that you use somebody's talent that isn't yours as if it were yours, and work together in complete harmony? A business is not ever going to elevate to what it could and should be until they have a specialized talent team working in harmony, sharing talent. And what you're doing with Rivets is very similar. Why not have that for a family? Why not have your purpose statement? You know, in business, what we do in performance business, we talk to everyone. You shouldn't start a meeting unless you are first opening with your purpose. Your purpose statement. This is what we believe. And everything that we talk about has to be in the circle of our culture because it's what we believe. Same thing with the family. Fascinating.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that we try to emphasize with families is that it's about unity and diversity. It's not about being the same or about conformity. And I'll be honest, a lot of the clients I work with they're very, very successful people. And they tend to have outsized strengths and abilities. And I think sometimes an impression can happen within a family that I need to be like that person to be successful. But that can create a model of I'm either like that person or I'm not.
Right.
What we try to emphasize is this unity and diversity, that we're all different. That's what makes us the same. But in that Venn diagram of the uniqueness of a family, where can we agree and where can we overlap?
Right.
And then where can we take the strengths of some core values and harness that to make the others better? And so, one of the examples I give is justice and mercy. Those are two core values. And I think so often we think of them as opposing forces. But the question is, would you rather live in a world of justice and no mercy, or in a world of mercy and no justice? And the reality is those both sound a little dystopian to me. I'm not sure I want to live in either one of those. And what we sometimes see is the competition of values or actually the completion of values. And so many of the values that I might lack, others in the family can actually complement and enhance in a way that's really powerful. And that's when families can understand that and understand that specialization, that unique perspective, you're strengthening all of the other values.
Well, I tell you, a lot of people think when you talk about estate planning that you have to have a lot of money in order to have estate planning, and that is just not so. As we look at in our work, we talk about you can be wealthy or you can be rich. What's the difference? Wealthy is money. Rich is achieving your purpose in the 5 roles of your life: family, faith, community, health, and enough wealth to be present in the other 4. What would you rather be? All of us love our children. And we want more. But where did we get the user guide or the training manual of being a parent? You figure it out on about the 3rd, 4th child. And we can do better than that. And that's one of the reasons we started Yes, Our Kids Can. And it's funny when you were talking about value, we have for each chapter, for each principle, we have a cartoon series that goes with it. And one of the songs is Everybody is Special in Their Own Special Way. And talking and getting a child to realize, embrace you and don't feel like you have to be like your older brother, your father, your mother. You're you, and you're special in your own special way. I'd like to pivot for a minute and tell me about your early beginning. What made you want to get into law and then estate planning?
Great question. I wish I had a more noble reason. I grew up watching LA Law. And what I loved about that is each week they'd have a different case, and one attorney would get up and they'd make their argument on something. And I was like, oh, I totally agree with that. Then the next attorney would get up and make the exact opposite argument. And I'm like, well, I totally agree with that. And I love that part of it. That said, I grew up, my dad had an accounting firm. So I grew up, I was 12 years old answering the phone, I was doing basic tax returns at 18. And so I had that accounting background. I got my undergrad in accounting. But one of the things I found out in law school is that I'm not an arguer. I'm not an adversarial person. I like solving problems. And so much of the law, the litigation side was arguing. And honestly, it's about arguing over money. Yeah. So I saw estate planning as kind of a natural progression of the experience that I had. But then I also came to love it because I'm not only dealing with families, but I'm fortunate I get to deal with a lot of entrepreneurs. And they're just special people. They're unique. They're only about 8% of the population. But they have such a unique mindset, a unique mentality. They're just different. And I love being around entrepreneurs. So I got to work with a lot of closely held business owners, a lot of families. And so to me, it was that convergence of the legal and the human that I think estate planning just is right at the center of.
Well, you have a unique approach to it. Not everybody does, because most don't get into the value, the people part. And that's one of the reasons that we always look to you in our business that we have here at IBG and eLeader Tech, that we work with a lot of business owners. And when it comes to estate planning, you're the guy that I always suggest that they ought to sit down and talk to. Tell me, how is it that somebody finds your books, finds you? How do they go about that?
Yeah, so our books are all the natural Amazon, Kindle, Audible. You can also go to YorkHowell.com is our law firm. David R. York has got a lot of personal resources. And then our software that we're using to help families is called Cornology. So it's just Cornology.com. We're trying to
did you develop the software, the code from A to Z?
Again, this is so funny. I feel like we live parallel lives. That was another one that I had no idea what I was getting into. We developed all of the software because we wanted to create a simple, easy way for people to get an understanding, not just of themselves, but of each person in their family. Because I think once you understand yourself from a value perspective, you understand others, it helps you deal with and navigate so many issues in life.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I want to give you a gift today for being on our program, and this is my latest book, Live Ready, Beyond Think and Grow Rich. And
thank you very much.
I've got David's book here, Dudley's Castle. And David, I want to thank you for being on our program.
Yeah, anytime. Thank you.
Great.